Listen up, fellow Democrats. Fight fake news and lies with facts. Save our democracy from right-wing hypocrisy. Keep our integrity, embrace our diversity. Whenever we're down, we always come back. So listen up, Democrats.
Hello, welcome to Progressive Oregon, a weekly live stream broadcast on progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor, and I'm your host. Today, we have three segments. We will do a brief weekly update on some events that happened last week. The next segment will be on Unpacking the Democratic National Convention, Part 3. This is the third segment, which talks about what actually happened inside the convention hall. And then our last segment will be on Oregon's housing and homeless crisis. So, first of all, we have Hurricane Harvey and the collateral damage of what happened in Texas. The most heartbreaking thing about the story was the unintended consequences of the decisions that people have made in the past, such as what is and is not in the floodplain and who does not have homeowners insurance. So all of these things are decisions made by politicians that were elected, but those decisions are now coming home to roost because the hurricane was real. So again, this is just another reason why we need to elect people with uncompromising integrity and with the interests of the people and foremost in their values. It is so disheartening to hear about special deals cut for insurance companies or for developers who want to develop in floodplains because it's the children and the parents who were not involved in the purchase of the house who ends up being impacted by all of this. So going on to the next topic, there was an article on the nomination convention for House District 38 in the Lake Oswego Review, which was extremely well written. It was by a reporter named Anthony McCook, who was at the convention that night and did a really good job of talking to all the parties and establishing the facts around it. The most shocking thing that I saw there from my perspective was the reason why the Democratic Party of Oregon gave for having the accelerated schedule of the convention, which limited the amount of time for the unknown candidates to meet the precinct committee people. They said they did it because of the eclipse. The commissioners have now had a month to think about their decision, and they're going to do their voting on September 13th. But it would have been nice, especially for the people who are not into the whole party culture, to have had been treated a little more respectfully in this whole process. The other thing that they mentioned was that the rift within the party between the Bernie people and the Hillary people was exposed. I don't think that is the split anymore because the convention is a year in the past. I think the split is really between those who want to keep the establishment party in control and have control over the selection of legislators versus those people who were in the party and who would like to restore democracy to the processes. That is really the split that we saw going on that night, and it's something that we're going to have to fix. The next segment is about, or the next news topic is about the high roller fundraiser that Senator Rod Monroe had at his house. He just had his 75th birthday, and he had a fundraiser on a Monday at 3 o'clock. And the admission to the fundraiser was $1,000 to $5,000, and it was for people to give money to his reelection campaign. So the tenants' rights people found out about this and had a protest. So what you'll see now is film from the protest, which I cannot ever remember a protest happening in front of a legislator's house before. And then at the very end, you'll see who pulled up. So let's roll the footage from the tenants' protest at Rod Monroe's house and district office.
All right, I promise I will, Larry. But I want to say hi to everybody out there. Thank you for joining us in the audience. Larry's like ripping through all the news because we've got some guests to talk to. So, yeah. Good show, Larry. Here you go.
Never mind the landlord lies. You all know the rent's too high. Never mind the landlord lies. You all know the rent's too high. Don't you know where the heck was Rodman Row? There's a housing crisis. Don't you know? Oh, Rodman Row has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. Rodman Row has got to go.
Never mind those landlord lies.
You all know the rent's too high. You all know the rent's too high. Rodman Row, can't you see? Renters demand dignity. Rodman Row, can't you see? Renters demand more.
Democratic landlords, senators of Salem, you are such a sorry lot to see. Democratic landlords, senators of Salem, you look just like Republicans to me.
In its early stages, the bill talked to rent control, but then the real estate developers played the normal role, so now the landlords hold the leases and the senators wear collars once they were bought off with lots and lots of dollars. Democratic landlords, senators of Salem, you are such a sorry lot to see. Democratic landlords, senators of Salem, you look just like the Republicans to me. But you talk a different line. You care about constituents, all those bribes are just free speech. They really have no influence. You're a liberal, you say. Look at your heart, it bleeds. You care about all kinds of things, just not about people's basic needs. Democratic landlords, senators of Salem, you are such a sorry lot to see. Democratic landlords, senators of Salem, you look just like Republicans to me.
I know it's not easy to come, but I'm kind of doing myself a ride if you don't mind.
And there were the police who showed up in the night. But to be totally fair to the police, they even though they showed up and there were 3 police cars, they were amused by the whole situation. One of them got out and took the presents that had been deposited on Rodman Row's door and took them back to the street. But then they went back to their cars. So the whole event ended peacefully.
Good to know about the police presence. Thanks for that.
So the last thing, just so you know, Bernie Sanders and the Fight for 15 is what he will be working on Labor Day. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, John?
Well, thanks for asking, Larry. Yeah, we're going to probably do a streamathon. I'm waiting to find out from Fight for 15 folks about the 8 a.m. Pacific Bernie rally in New Hampshire, and then he's going somewhere later on in Vermont, and I'm trying to find out which ones of these are going to be live streamed so we can carry it tomorrow. And hopefully you'll join us, Larry, to talk about what you got going on.
Excellent.
So thank you.
So that wraps up the news from last week, and we'll go to our next segment, which is part 3 of the Democratic National Convention, What Happened Inside. So today I have 2 Bernie delegates from the convention last year. We have Leah LaFleur, who is the current chair of the 3rd Congressional District Central Committee inside the Democratic Party of Oregon. And we have Annie Naranjo Rivera, who has multiple titles, including vice chair of the Tillamook County Democrats. She's president of Grassroots Impact, and she's vice chair of the Progressive Caucus. So welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. So the first slide I'm showing is the physical structure of the stadium or the arena where the convention was held. And then if we go to slide 6, you'll see what it normally looks like. We were there a month before the convention, and they were just finishing up the last of the games, and the Democratic National Committee was going to move in and start construction of the facility, and we'll show some pictures later of what the stage actually looked like. So what we were going to talk about is what the experience was like inside the convention, and what the expectations were of the delegates who had been going for the first time. So I'll turn it over to Leah to kick it off. Leah?
Thanks, Larry. Yes, it was my first rodeo, as it was for many of us who were part of the Bernie delegation. So I think a lot of us just didn't really know what to expect. There had been shenanigans leading up to things, and I think that a lot of us were very much on guard as far as what could possibly happen going into the convention. So I know that there were a lot of us who were, yes, both suspicious and planful into going into things. So I guess I would start with that. Annie, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, the weeks leading up to the convention, there was a lot of organizing going on nationwide to connect the delegations from each state as they were elected to serve as national delegates. So I know that Leo was involved in that, and I was very involved in that as well, so that we could all be in contact and try to prepare and know what to expect. We weren't really prepared very well for what it was actually going to look like on the ground by the party. So we were organizing ourselves going in, so we would have some sort of communications infrastructure.
So Leah, did you want to talk about what you were working on right prior to the convention?
Sure. Immediately leading up to the convention, I had been doing some work on open primaries amendments to the DNC charter and to the DNC rules. They were supposed to be presented at the Rules Committee meeting that happened a day or two before the convention was supposed to begin. But all of the time was taken up to discuss the superdelegates amendments and then the things that I had written about the open primaries had gotten hit to the cutting room floor. Thankfully, though, they all got rejoined by the Unity Commission, which is going to be discussing these things moving forward. So that was encouraging. So yes, the Rules Committee meeting before that, but also in the spirit of positivity and open-mindedness, and in the general flow of good energy, on Sunday before the convention, I reprised my role as priestess for the ritual for the progressive movement, and did a really lovely group gathering at FDR Park where we talked about the kinds of things that we would love to have our heart ballots vote on, the types of things that really support people in communities and that our legislators just aren't bringing up. And it was very serendipitous as the ritual was ending. The marchers from City Hall were just arriving, and it was really just a very beautiful event, the ending of the ceremony and the entrance of thousands of people who were just bringing all of this really wonderful, radical, progressive energy with them.
So that was Sunday. And then the convention ran Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And so what we're going to talk about is day 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the convention. As we all know, the Trump convention, the Republican convention was poorly put together, poorly structured. Everyone thought that would be another item that sank the Trump campaign, and that the Democrats would show up with their fabulous organization and blow everyone's socks off. And it was a very well scripted event, but it's certainly not the convention that the older members of our society remember from when we were kids, when we would watch black and white television and see the delegates chanting on the floor and actually making decisions. So let's go to day 1. Who would like to start?
I'll start us off. So going into day 1, I think that people were not prepared for what was going to happen generally. And in the Oregon delegation, I think we are more prepared than some others from around the country. We had purchased battery packs to charge our own phones and things like that. And we had printed packets of materials to get out to all the other states so that people could call for roll call and division and use parliamentary procedure. So Larry's talking about the old days when people actually did things at conventions and it wasn't just scripted. Remember that each delegate from Oregon represents about 8,000 voters, and we are a parliamentary body when we're together. And, we're supposedly supposed to be able to make decisions and, function properly in that way. And that it became pretty obvious wasn't going to happen right away. Even with the info that people had handed out, we had no ability to have access to our telephones that we could use to call in to the stage. And we later learned that those actually were routed into a boiler room in the back, which Larry will talk about a little bit later. But we weren't able to use our voices as people that were representing a lot of voters from our state. So that was the setting the stage for the first day. I don't know if you want to jump in here, Leah.
Sure. I would say, yeah, very much everything that you just said, Annie. And then I would say, additionally, on top of that, things were made unnecessarily complex at the last moment, which really just threw a monkey wrench into everything. Bernie Sanders wanted to address his delegation on Monday before we had reached the Wells Fargo Center. So I guess one thing I would want to say is that the convention happened in two pieces each day. There was a morning presentation at the Pennsylvania Center, and then the evening presentation, the part that was televised, was at the Wells Fargo Center. So all of the delegates are at point A to begin with, and we need to end up at point B for the evening program. And that originally Bernie was supposed to address his delegates at noon, and the gavel was going to happen across town at 5, and that seemed fine. And then all of a sudden Bernie was going to address his delegation at 3, and gavel across town was at 4. And that just really created an enormous amount of chaos within the delegation.
Yeah,
but Bernie did address it, and everything was wonderful, and we all got across town, which was good.
And so just to set the stage as we're going through the week, on Monday, a lot of people still thought that everything was going to become clear and that when we got there on Monday, we would understand what was going on and things would all of a sudden become magically fair and transparent, and that Bernie's campaign would have a master plan and things like that. And so going into the first day, people were still pretty optimistic. And by the end of Monday, I think people had realized really what was going on, which was sort of a whitewashing of the feelings that many folks had there in the Wells Fargo Center. So, for instance, we weren't allowed to bring in any signs to show that we supported Bernie or for any of our issues. So, you'll see pictures of what our delegation did. We brought in banners, huge banners that we distributed that were iron-on letters, ironed onto pieces of fabric that we had made as skirts so that we could sneak them in, wear them in as skirts if need be. And, you see the no on TPP signs that people had folded up and things like that. So we had to sort of get creative to get our message across. And that became really abundantly clear on Monday. So.
Yeah, let's go to slide 7. So this is, you can see the folds and the signs where people had folded them up. And these things, there was coordination on both sides. So I don't know how the TPP people got coordinated, but spontaneously they all pulled out their signs and we're doing TPP chants. We could tell that there was structure going on because there were phones in each of the delegations, and periodically our executive director would answer the phone and there would be some talk, and then there would be some shuffling around of people. I was actually separated from the delegation, and I don't know quite why. They had the super delegates sit separate from the elected officials who were there, the other super delegates at like Wyden and Merkley, and then they had the Hillary delegates generally sitting together and the Bernie delegates sitting together. And
well, every state sort of ran it differently. So within Oregon, the first day, they tried to give us all assigned seats, and it turned out that, people wanted to sit where they wanted to sit, and our assigned seats, we wanted to make sure that we were close by our phone, because what we understood is that we would need to use our phone to call into the stage if we wanted to, do something as a delegation using our voices, like voting and things like that. And we didn't have access to our phone. So that was one thing that folks were trying to do, is just get access to our phone to be able to use our voices as the delegation. And, people from around the country were saying, okay, who has a chair that's favorable to our cause, who would let us use our phone to be able to use our voices? So, it was really a sort of dystopian scene in a lot of ways. So I just want to talk about a few things that are important. Our handicapped delegates, and we had a couple, were treated really poorly. And so going in, I've been a Democrat since I was 18, and I know that there are problems with the party, but I could have never imagined the level of grotesque behavior that would occur if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. And I'm here today to tell that story and to be a voice for that, because I think even now there's a lot of stigma around the word Bernie. And I mean, he's the most popular politician in the nation. And still, being a Bernie delegate has some stigma within the party. So our handicapped delegates were put behind us, and they were in between the Oregon delegation and the Washington delegation, who were the section above us. And they were bruised at the end of the convention. They had been trampled, pushed around. Things were not properly accessible. It wasn't in compliance with ADA. And, it was not a good look for the Democratic Party. And I know ahead of time, talking to blind delegates who had been elected from a number of states, they had some real challenges just trying to find out if they would have access to basic things like a support person or materials that they could, use because they're blind, et cetera. And so, that, and then the separation of people, I think, was also an intentional tactic that was used. Our credentials delegate, one of our credentials people from Oregon, she was sitting all by herself in a section way, way above the entire delegation. And she was actually assaulted by some really enthusiastic Hillary fans. And she had a panic attack. And, I found her walking through the halls of the Wells Fargo Center. I happened to run into her, and she was, hysterical and afraid. She didn't want to go back up there, but she didn't want to miss the convention. And she felt like this was an important thing to be part of. And, we were able to bring that to the attention of the DPO, Democratic Party of Oregon leadership, and, demand that she have a safe place to sit and things like that. But there were people that were hired to come in and steal our seats. So if we would get up to go to the bathroom or get some food, et cetera, we would come back to find that somebody had forcefully taken our seats. So we actually had delegates that were standing at the entrance to our section, guarding the aisles, just to protect our right to have a seat. Now, our voice has been taken away. We don't have access to our phone. We're not supposed to have signs. And now we have to just protect our right to be there. So, I mean, just setting the stage for the rest of the week. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah. So to go to slide 8, this shows you what the arena looked like. The Oregon delegation is basically in the center, and there's another picture coming up showing what the perspective looked like from the Oregon delegation. Wasn't the worst seat in the House. The poor delegation that really got slighted was the California delegation, which had a very vocal Bernie group contingent in them. They were just to the immediate side of the stage, over on the right-hand side of the picture. And every time they would start chanting, there would be a signal go out, and their chant would be co-opted by the Hillary people. And they would have similarly rhymed chants so that not only would their message be drowned out, it would be turned into a different message. And then the other thing that went on was that they would turn off the lights. So the California delegation spent a good portion of their time in the dark. And I think we were also put in the dark. And what was the occasion of our darkness?
Using our voices caused us to be cast into darkness. And there's actually a great picture, an aerial picture from above, taken by, I think, Valdez Bravo, the vice chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon now. But he was a Bernie delegate, and actually our whip for the Bernie delegation. He took a picture from above because he was sitting up there with his wife, I believe. And you can just see a black square, which is where Oregon is sitting. And I'm pretty sure that was during the No More War chant, which was drowned out by USA, USA, chanting from the Hillary delegates. So no more war, which is something a lot of us can get behind as Democrats, drowned out by a chant of USA, USA. And while we're in blackness. So not really American values, in my opinion. But to get back to the convention, there were a few delegations that were sort of leading the charge, and I think that they were targeted. We had people in our Oregon section who were obviously not delegates and were taking pictures of our cell phones, and that's how they, were getting access to our plans and what our chants were going to be and what kind of actions we were going to do. So, we actually did find somebody and confront them about photographing our phones and violating our privacy. And they were eventually removed from our section. But, just the extreme that they are willing to go to really showing through.
So we go to slide 9. This is the view from where we were sitting in the Oregon delegation. And after the convention, we learned that constructed behind the stage was an area called the Boiler Room. And this is where a combined team of the Sanders people and the Clinton people were working together to make sure that the broadcast show of the Democratic National Convention was unity and love, and that any dissent was dealt with. And so it was from the Boiler Room that they would do things like turn off the lights. And I heard that there were another point where the delegation was locked off by them unfolding flags. So I just read a section of the book Shattered by Jonathan Allen and Annie Parnes that talks about the Boiler Room. So it says, inside the Boiler Room and around the convention hall, Clinton and Sanders aides worked to quiet the recalcitrants. On the first day, their text messaging coordination system hadn't prevented pro-Bernie delegates from making a scene, but by Tuesday, after Bernie had called for Hillary's election from the podium the night before, the two camps found more success in tamping down dissent. So there you can see where the Boiler Room operation was run from to ensure that the image portrayed to the world was one of unity behind Hillary. Leah, was there anything you'd like to add?
No, not. But pretty much you guys have said everything.
It's 10:40, you guys. Just so you know, Larry, we're 10 minutes past time on this.
I just want to talk quickly about the walkout. So we ended up doing a walkout from the convention, and folks had tape over their mouths with the word silence, and people were gagged. Some people had dollar bills with the word silence, and the emails came out from WikiLeaks during this time period. So people knew there was proof that the DNC had rigged the primary, and people were understandably upset. That wasn't addressed. There was no public apology. Debbie Wasserman Schultz did not appear that first day, but people were very upset, and we did end up doing a walkout, which was staged between the delegations, and we occupied the media tent, which was kind of I think brilliant, because we are being silenced and being blocked out by the media, and it's not being covered, and what's being shown on TV is this unity, and here we are surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of reporters, and cameras and, showing that we won't be silenced. So it was a peaceful walk-in. At one point, the doors were actually locked and we were surrounded by a line of armed officers. And then I was inside the building. And when I looked through the windows, Leah LaFleur was actually on the other side of the window. And there's a photo of us touching palms through the window. But there were, hundreds of delegates outside and a couple hundred inside. And along the line of the roof of the Wells Fargo Center, all dressed in black with their weapons pointed at us on the inside were, the Secret Service people. So it was really a scene, and they were flying a helicopter over and over above the media tent. So to sort of set the mood of what it was like there.
Yeah, I got to say, snipers on the roof was somewhat disquieting. But I also want to add that in addition to recognizing that our vocal messages may not be heard in the lead up to the convention, T-shirts were ordered. And on the final day, we all wore our T-shirts, everyone who participated. And I would say it was probably at least, 500 people, if not more. And there was discussion over the T-shirts when they were being ordered. What color? How do we do this? Finally, a color was selected. Many people were unhappy with it. It was kind of a bright yellowish green. But then when we were all wearing our T-shirts on the final day of the convention and they dimmed the lights to do a video broadcast, all of our T-shirts glowed. It was amazing to see just this visual representation of something that we weren't able to communicate vocally at the convention, just to kind of show that, yes, we were all here. We were all supporting this cause. And yeah, it was important to us.
So we're looking forward to all of our newly elected Democratic National Committee delegates to cleaning up the party and making sure that when we do this again in 2020, that it's done in a more democratic way and not just a show for the world to watch, because now we know it doesn't work. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm assuming that we got a late start, so we'll be able to get the next segment in. So switching to the other topic, we wanted to talk about Oregon's housing and homeless crisis. Betsy, would you like to do some introductions?
Hello. Yes, we're going to have a couple of programs that are going to talk about housing and homelessness in Oregon. It is a major policy issue. Today we're going to have guests from Sisters of the Road in Portland. But a couple weeks ago, the HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, the federal government, asked communities every 2 years to count homelessness in order to receive federal funding under what is called the McKinney-Vento Homeless Services Act, which a lot of the community action agencies that are in various communities throughout Oregon use to provide homeless services in a variety of ways. So the 2007 count, which was done in January, February of this year, they just take one day and mobilized to count the homeless in Oregon. HUD showed that from 2015 to 2017, the statewide average rose 7%. And veterans, which is a focused population that a lot of resources have been put into the last several years, had an increase of 4%. And so we're going to talk, this program is going to be a lot about the Multnomah County, Portland area, and homelessness in that area rose at almost 10%, 9.8% is on the second slide. And at the same time, within that same time frame, at least in 2016, housing prices in the Portland area for the cost of housing rose 9.2% and rent rose 14%. So there is a clear correlation between the lack of housing and homelessness. So who we have today is Shannon Hogan from Sisters of the Road and Eric and Shaggy. And so I'd like to kind of turn over. They're going to talk about what Sisters of the Road has been doing, the status of homeless, what's happening, and particularly the impact of homelessness and laws that tend to criminalize homeless behavior in Oregon, or behavior of people who are homeless. And it's called the criminalization, and what Sisters has been involved in addressing that issue. So Shannon?
Hi, everyone. I am here at Sisters with Shaggy next to me, and then Eric is going to be with us, but off camera today. First, just to introduce Sisters, we have been in the Old Town Chinatown neighborhood of Portland, which is right downtown, since 1979. And we are founded on a community organizing model by asking people living in the neighborhood what they wanted, what they needed. And Sisters is what people said they wanted and needed. It's a public community space where anybody can come in. We serve nourishing, hot, delicious meals a few times a week, 5 days a week. We're a place where anybody can come in, get a hot cup of coffee. People can barter for their meals here. So the cafe is run by people in part who are working to earn their meals and using that barter credit to pay. And then they're also able to take that barter credit to Portland farmers markets and use it all around town. So we see, we see a lot of people who are coming in that are sleeping outside or in shelters, or who are living in SROs, single room occupancy housing around the neighborhood. And is there anything that I've missed, Shaggy, you want to add, or Eric?
We also see a little bit of everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a very mixed crowd, but yes, it is, I think primarily it's people in that description.
And it feels like the problem's accelerating more than, I don't know how the counts could accurately figure out how many and how fast houselessness is getting a problem, but it definitely doesn't seem as small as, as those figures would make you feel like.
And I think that something we know is that those numbers are consistently an undercount. There's a lot of people who do not feel comfortable being surveyed by somebody who's asking them a bunch of questions for the government. And there are a lot of people who would fit the HUD definition of homelessness, are couch surfing or are sleeping in vehicles and don't want to be found and are not easily found by those giving those surveys. So I would say that we number is actually usually a double whatever they come up with. So I think in Multnomah County in 2015, it was around 4,000 people that they said fit the definition of unhoused. And again, that's an undercount, so it's probably about double that.
And so can you talk a little bit about the criminalization and what that means and what has been happening in the last couple of legislative sessions regarding homeless rights?
Yeah, Sisters is a part of a multi-state coalition called the Western Regional Advocacy Project, or WRAP. And so we work with people in California and Colorado and then Oregon to decriminalize people's existence in public spaces. Portland itself, just the city proper of Portland, has about 11 city ordinances that criminalize existence in public spaces, be it loitering laws, be it anti-camping laws, be it curfew laws. Other laws like urinating and defecating in public target people who are sleeping outside. The college bros that come into Portland's entertainment district on the weekend and get drunk and are peeing on the sidewalks are not targeted or criminalized for their behavior, but people who are sleeping outside that look poor are targeted. And so what we've been doing since 2005 with this coalition RAP, the Western Regional Advocacy Project, is creating a history that includes why people don't have housing, and then working on statewide legislation to take laws off the book that criminalize people for their existence in public spaces. So we were stonewalled in the legislature this year, and our bill, the Right to Rest Act, did not get even to a committee hearing. So Representative Barker of Aloha said that the Right to Rest Act could not get a hearing that would allow a vote. He would give us a tokenizing hearing that would allow be heard, but the bill would have no potential of moving forward from there. And this bill is so essential to ending sweeps, which are displacements of people who are sleeping outside, who are told you can't be here, go somewhere else, but not told where they can go. The bill would require that people are given the dignity of being told where they can go if they're being swept by the police. And it would also provide for privacy protections. So it's wildly unpopular in some circles, like real estate interests and some law enforcement interests are against this, as well as your typical NIMBY folks. And we are just seeing sweeps happening all around us every single day. We're seeing people cited, ticketed, fined just for sitting on a park bench, for sitting on the grass in a park.
And everything they own is thrown in the trash.
Yeah, so if you want to speak about that more.
Not mentioned is that typically whenever that happens, you'll have some, most, or even all of your possessions subject to just being lost. You won't ever be able to, they won't even write a receipt for them. So they're expecting this vast group of people to be able to get onto their feet, but left, right, and in between, they're doing their best to sweep them off of it.
So when the police come and say you can't be somewhere, they don't give you a ticket for where you can find your stuff after they take it.
Or that, yeah, I mean, a lot of times they try to get into camps. I've heard whenever there's nobody there, people saying to leave. It's a case by case of very complicated circumstances.
Yeah, the occupants won't always be in the area that they're sweeping while they're sweeping it.
So someone could leave for the day to go to their doctor's appointment, go to get food, and come back to the place they've been residing where all their personal belongings are, and their personal belongings will be gone. Are often the enforcement agents of the state's laws in these cases, and so they're the ones taking stuff. They also use inmate labor to sweep people. So people are paid about $1 an hour by the county to take other poor people's things.
So Ted Wheeler has been mayor for just under a year, I believe. Has anything improved under his administration?
No. Ted Wheeler is a proponent of increasing, quote, livability. And when he is talking about livability, he's not talking about how housed and unhoused folks can occupy the same neighborhoods together. He's talking about what housed people consider livability, which means not seeing poor people in their neighborhoods. He increased the forest rangers, the park rangers budget for this coming year so that they could increase their sweeps along the Springwater Corridor, which is a popular place for people to camp.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add? You want to talk Portland in general?
Not specifically.
Where do we go from here, Betsy?
Well, I would like to point out that these bills, not just the Right to Rest Act, but some renters protections that were in the state legislature did not go anywhere, and we have a majority of Democrats in both houses. So I think that kind of indicates we need to look at who those Democrats are that are representing us in the state legislature, because there's actually growing support for the Homeless Bill of Rights over the years, but still, as Shannon said, it didn't even get out of the committee it was put in this year. And that committee, also has a majority of Democrats. So we've been dealing with this issue. I was a homeless advocate in the 1980s in Los Angeles area. And when the first escalation of homelessness, particularly among families, and I was sitting with a bunch of social service folks. I was actually representing a tenants' rights and housing organization at the time. And I said, we need affordable housing. We cannot, the privatization of housing, and the next show we'll talk about what has happened in housing, the economy, the privatization of affordable housing is really what puts the stressor on the housing market, particularly for the low-income people. And there's also policies in place that people who are homeless cannot get housing, even in government-funded housing, that we need to look at changing. So is there anything else that Shannon or Eric or Shaggy would like to add?
Just because I want to point out the very real possibility that classifying anybody who doesn't have a house or currently a place to live as homeless, it's like making it something that like a pre-existing condition. It can happen to anybody much faster than they realize. And it's not always easy to just get back out of it when some circumstances coincide. I don't know. Especially the way lots of things are going, there could be a lot of people cast into it. And if we're making, anyway.
And almost anything can happen at any time. Anytime you leave your house, you're not in your house. You are essentially houseless. You don't know what's happening. I use the term of Schrodinger's cat as Schrodinger's house. You don't know you can't control what's going on there. So it really, it can happen to anyone at any time. And whenever you're outside, if you can't get a charge on your cell phone, I've had one for years, but have any way of communicating outside homes, it's really, I don't know.
Wow, that was a very good point. Were there any questions that came in on the line?
Well, there's some comments. Martha Bryson, who's actually been a longtime housing and homeless advocate, mentioned that you need to look at some of the community action agencies, some of the service agencies, and the group that she and I and some other folks has founded some years ago work on the policy advocacy side and what I call the guerrilla hardcore advocacy side. So you need to see what your community action agencies, how they're using homeless funds. Are they really providing the service that, can impact homelessness in an appropriate way? And Jamie Sanchez indicated that, which is absolutely true, that housing is not viewed as a right. In America, it is something that is a privilege, and that is a major mindset that needs to be changed. And Douglas County is like where I'm from, is rural but has the same problems, but even more so because we have far less services. There's only one shelter in Douglas County for homeless folks, and that's run by a very draconian rescue mission. And so a significant number of our street level homeless are homeless because they either won't abide by the way they're treated at that shelter, or they're banned because somebody smelled alcohol on them. You know, people talk about housing first. We need to realize that if it's a right, then it doesn't matter if you're an addict. It doesn't matter if you're drunk. It doesn't matter if you're on drugs. You have a right to housing. You have a right to shelter in America. And that needs to be a progressive priority. So.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Well, somebody points out it's so traumatic to not have secure housing. It's a nightmare, and I think the folks already indicated that. You know, we do street level housing advocacy in Douglas County, and you're on the street literally for a couple of months, and you might never get out off the street here, because everything kind of falls apart, like they said. You know, and it happens quickly.
And I would say also a lot of quote unquote affordable housing is made affordable for people who are earning about 30 to 60% of a median family income, which is not what a lot of people are making. Made affordable for people making 0 to 30%. We're making no money to a year or less. And so that's why affordable housing really has to be examined as a concept and as it's put in place into policies. Is this going to be affordable for people who don't have any source of income right now?
That's an excellent point, Shannon, and that's really where the privatization of housing changed from the 1980s. And that's exactly the reason, because we don't have income-based affordable housing. And affordable housing is used as a broad term. And I think when Paul Bowden from the Western Regional Advocacy Project is on the show at the end of September, he will go into that and how housing has shifted, why we have the crisis in housing in America today, and really why we have it on the lower end level. And just what you said, Shannon, there are people, if you have no income in Douglas County, you cannot get sheltered today, even in our only transitional housing program run by our local housing authority on the VA campus. So that's the kind of mess that we really are in. And I think unless you're not doing the work that Shannon is doing and folks like me are doing, you don't really know how bad this housing situation is and why it is the way it is.
And I'd also like to point out that just like in Douglas County, there isn't housing or shelter for people making no money or who don't want to abide by those draconian policies of a shelter. We across the state are criminalizing people for not wanting to go into shelter or for not having housing. There are 224 laws across the state of Oregon in the major municipalities that criminalize people for their existence in public spaces. And so this is not just a Portland-centric or a Multnomah County-centric criminalization. It is happening across the state. It looks different in Ashland than it does in Portland, happening in different ways. And so that's why we, sisters, are looking to connect with people across the state who want to get these laws off the books and make it so that poverty is not criminalized.
So thank you so much for joining today. There's several topics that is going to branch out from this conversation. This was a great introduction. In future segments, I'd like to talk about how these bills go into the legislature and end up dying, even though there's widespread support and public need. And then we're also going to talk about what homelessness looks like outside of the metro area, because that's where most of the focus is. So again, thank you so much, Shannon, and the guys from the Sisters of the Road for joining today. And Betsy, thank you so much for bringing up this, Eric. And thank you, Betsy, for bringing this up. I think that's all the time we have today. And thank you, everyone who has joined us for watching.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you. And if you'd like to continue the discussion about housing and homelessness, you can do so on the Progressive Oregon Facebook page. We give an opportunity if you want to know what's happening, have discussions and make connections.
Awesome. Thank you, Betsy. Thank you, everybody. Hey, Larry, don't we have a song to go out with? And you had some other thing in here, this On the Ground trailer. What's going on with that? Betsy?
Oh yeah, the On the Ground trailer. That is a documentary that Sisters of the Road released in 2017. So you can watch the whole episode, but here's just a trailer from it pointing out the Portland housing crisis.
Let's roll it. Oh wait, sorry, that's the song. Let's roll this.
I got this feeling in me that says I'm going to be homeless forever. And it's like, okay, maybe that's not necessarily true.
We had an African American, we had a black neighborhood, and this was it. I used to live up there.
We're just trying to survive and feel protected and have a place to be.
I think the actual number of people sleeping on the streets have went up 75% than last year.
If the typical apartment rent is going up 10 or 12% a year, we know there are going to be people left behind in this economy.
We all need to work together to make our community more equitable, more just, and safe for everybody.
When you sweep us, move along to where? Where can we go?
Very nice. All right. You want to go out with your song, Larry? Who picked this?
Yes.
So tell me about it. This is a great show. You guys really, I just want to tell you, the audience said a great show. Lots of information. It's tough that nobody's covering, so I really appreciate all the work that you and Betsy and everybody put into this, and the guests. It was really good.
Betsy, background on the song?
It is Daphne. I can't remember her last name. I think who it's called.
Daphne Willis. Someone, and it was written specifically about the issue of mental health, addiction, and homelessness. And the reality is that, the song kind of says it. You'll hear it. About the humanity. Thank you so much. Thank you, Larry.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, audience.
Downtown used to live in this neighborhood. Like the homeless people that I see hanging around.
Bright light on the corner of a dark street. Just a cardboard sign and a can in between some dirty bare feet. Eyes that I can't bring myself to meet. Yeah, well I could spare 20 if I knew you'd be using it to get just what you need. And ooh, I'm just another cold shoulder. You're somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's mother, father, somebody's someone, somebody's missing you. Wherever you came from, wherever you go, I hope you know you're somebody's someone. You're somebody's someone. Picking up the phone, who's it gonna be this time? This time. It's the sound of your voice, but it ain't really you on the line. When you're gonna come out on the other side? Well, it's on you, cause you know there ain't nothing we can do, no matter how hard we're trying. Ooh, can't make you drink that water. Somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's mother, father, somebody's someone, somebody's missing you. Wherever you came from, wherever you go, I hope you know you're somebody's someone. my only brother. You're my mother's son, and I'm still your little sister. Somebody, someone.